Hi, welcome to Angel's Nook. If you like our videos, please like, comment, and especially subscribe so you know when the next one comes out. And if you're commenting, please let us know what you like, what you're interested in, what's helping you, and what you might like to see in the future. Thanks for stopping by. I bought a big box of these lanterns off of Marketplace a number of years ago. Someone was selling out their wedding reception decor, and I needed lanterns for, at the time, a school event at the school where I was teaching, and they were perfect for pieces for center, pieces for tables. And then over the years I have repainted them, I've redone them in different ways to give them away as gifts. And the more I looked at them, I wanted to try something totally different with them. And so we have removed all this excess bling off of them and simplified them. And now I'm going to completely redo their look. Just taking all that bling off of them has certainly calmed them down and made them a piece that could easily work in a home rather than as center pieces for tables or at weddings, which I'm sure this was beautiful at the wedding reception, but it's not really great in my home. So, or for other people that I might want to give them to now. So my goal for this is to make most of this look like wood. That's the look that I want to create with it. And these have glass inside them, so they can either be used with the glass, which is really nice if you're actually putting a real candle in there for safety. But if you're using the battery candles like this one is, having it open would be lovely as well. So that's what this project is going to be. We're going to do some different finishes on it and give it a wood look, and there'll be some metal left on it. There's no way around that, especially on this one. These pieces will have to have a metal look. So let's get started. We experimented with a variety of tools to see what we could do safely to get these pieces of bling off. They were spot welded, so it wasn't as easy as we thought it was going to be. If you're going to do something like this yourself, one, don't have your littles around. Little pieces can fly and you don't want them to get hit with it, and you need some type of safety glasses on in case that is the case. So we wound up with needle nose pliers, plastic pry bar to lift the tabs for the glass, a rough file, and a fine file, wire cutters, screwdriver, a mallet, and a tap to flatten out some of the areas. Then this has a little bit of roughness, so it would get the heavy. It's going to make an atrocious noise, so I'm not going to do it. But you would use the heavy file, the rough file first to get that down, and the fine one last, so that that piece wasn't bad that was up there. So that it's smooth to the touch, and be careful when you're checking it for whether or not it's still rough, because it will cut you. Off camera, all of the bling pieces were taken off of here, and then a considerable amount of time was spent with the file, smoothing all of these areas so that they are not sharp, smoothing these out, getting all of that ready to start painting. I'm going to be using a small art brush and possibly this one, because what I'm going to be painting is small areas. Depending on how the paint looks, I'll decide if I need to roll it or blot it with the piece of sponge. But the first thing, as always, is to gloss the surface. And they're ready to go. Set this out of my way. And the color I'm going to start with as my base for trying to turn these into a totally different look is Tapestry. The interior part is going to be done differently, so that's why I am not painting that design with this. And this is going on smoothly enough with the brush for what I'm going to be doing. And I painted that one, but I'm going to wait to paint those for later, so I have something to set them on while this upper part is drying. And there's method to my madness for why I'm painting the direction that I am on these, and you will see why in the next step. Think through when you have to hold something and you have underneath areas like this, you have to think about, where am I going to be holding this while I'm painting? And because I got in a hurry to start painting on this, I can't paint the inside right now because I would mess up all of this outside. So that means I'm gonna have to let this dry on the outside before I can do the inside. So when I start this one, I will start on the inside first, which is where I should have started on this one, and the rest of these I will start on the inside. I consider things like that just a learning process. And that is the first step for how these are going to be transformed. The inside of this one will get painted. The inside and outside of all the remaining lanterns that I'm going to be working with will have that done to them off camera. For the faux wood finish on these, it may be hard to see on camera, but it's very clear here. Maybe if I put this against this, you can see how warm that is against the white. The tapestry has dried overnight. I purposely did that. I didn't want it to lift off of the metal, but it'll be fine now. And I experimented with layering stains to see what I wanted, and I have several sets of these. So the first stain that I'm going to use on the layering is I'm going to use the toasted oak as the base, and then I'm going to add tobacco over it. I did the inside of these first. You need to do that anyway, but the angles are so awkward and so hard to get on camera that because my hand gets in the way. Now I'm going to do the outside so that you can see the process. And you want your brush really, really dry for this. It almost wants to stick to the surface. And like I've told you before, pay attention to where you're going. And I purposely did not smooth out the paint on the base coat so that it would help me create, the brush marks would help me create the faux finish. And hopefully the close-ups will help you to see how this is changing the finish to more of a wood look. I push up against those wires and pull back from them, pull back from here so that I maintain these lines, but there's no gaps where that wire goes on. Same thing with the latch. Get up against it. Treat it as though you're visualizing that this is pieces of wood that have been used to build this. And in the case of doing something like this, it's fine to feel the pull on your brush because that lets you get the grain lines. I'm using a brush that's been used a lot. It's been given a hard way to go over different surfaces because it will act like a chip brush does. I got some stain on there. I don't want it to start drying and make a spot. So I'm going to go ahead and do that door section. Keep your brush very dry or this goes on like a layer of paint, and I do not want that. Needs a little bit more. Wait. Bounce off on a clean area because I don't want heavy layers of this. Always taking your brush in the direction the grain would be on the wood. I am literally barely touching that stain, which was stirred off camera before I started doing the other work, to avoid applying it like paint. I have not done the upper portion of this yet, and I'm not going to until after I add the tobacco on these other pieces, so I've got something to safely grip without ruining the faux finish that I'm trying to create. This is actually pretty the way it is, but I want a little bit more depth to it. And the tapestry underneath has taken away any of the pink that toasted oak can sometimes pull. That's staying on there, so I went ahead and painted that piece. And if you notice, I'm going up and down, I'm not going across on that because the wood grain would go that direction. teensy bit of it again. Still pounce over here so my brush is not overloaded. It's actually kind of magical to watch it transform with the dry brush as you're doing it. Going back and checking that the top edge of that got finish on it. And now I will do these pieces. I'm just arbitrarily going to decide the direction on the top up here, but add the tobacco all the same direction on that, not going around it, but pulling as though it's pieces of wood. I may change my mind later and make that piece metal, but right now I'm just going to make it wood. Sorry, probably got that out of view for you. It makes it a lot easier for me if I could see it straight on. I'm embracing the anomalies in the metal as age and damage to the wood. By having very little stain on the brush, it gives you control of blending and making the marks look the way you want. And then double checking, oh, it's still wet, that nothing has been mixed. This one is getting the same process. There's stain all up on my brush because of the pouncing I'm doing which is pushing it up in there, but there's not a lot on here. And this one, because I wasn't paying attention, has changed its finish. It's just tobacco over this, because I forgot to put the toasted oak on. But since it's a different one, it's really not a big deal. And it's making a pretty finish. So I'm not going to complain about it. It's just going to be darker. And I will do another pair with that finish. Or I may actually just put, I think I will, I may put some toasted oak over this, because you can go any direction. With layering, you just have to stay consistent if you're doing more than one piece. This top, I have not decided yet if it's going to be metal or if it's going to be wood. So right now, I'm going to treat it as wood. Let's see how I like the look. Because I can always change it to a metal look if I decide that's what I want. And again, I did the bottom first so that I could have something to grasp, because you have to run your brush hard enough on this, creating the grain that you could leave fingerprints. The reason I didn't just mix the stains together is because you won't get this kind of variegation. You would only get like what I got with just putting the first coat of stain on any of these. And I like the variance because wood has variance. The rings usually don't stick to stain. You can usually lift them right up without any damage. I'm looking for places like that where there's a seam in the metal that I don't want to show and give away that this is metal and not wood. So pouncing the brush in there lets me get it in there, but just don't forget to smooth your grain lines back out. Okay, so these will be done to the rest of the lanterns, and then it'll be ready for the next steps. Very little paint on your brush and dip often, or you will have runs and globs and it will be a disaster. If it's wanting to pull thin again because you're using a brush that you're not going to use a roller or a sponge over, because it's really not applicable to what I'm doing right now because it would get all over the other finish. Use your brush and let it help you coat the surface. Sometimes going this way works best. Sometimes you have to go this way. The black wanted to go on better this way. The white on the other the almond on the other ones, it worked better if I did the crosswise instead of lengthwise. Again, the brush is covered in paint, but it's a very thin coat because it's getting pushed as I'm using the side of it. It's getting pushed into all the bristles. But I am barely touching this brush to the surface of the paint in the can. And if I picked up a big glob of paint, you would certainly see it, but I'm not going to ruin this piece to demonstrate that. And sometimes what I'm doing right now, of just pouncing with the side of the brush on something tiny like that, works as well. I just pay attention to what the surface is doing and modify to match that. My finger got some Irongate up here. So I need to rub it off. That's another reason why things like the finish that I did on this need to dry 48 hours before you start adding finish over it, so you can scrub it back off. And this little thing is a bit of a stinker. So let's see if I can show you on the counter here.
That's not recording.
Oh, jeez. Main little top is easy to get. And the first side, always kind of wiggle these things back and forth. There's usually a sweet spot for when they come out as far as they're going to. And if you leave it hanging like that, it's not going to stick to this, and it's not going to put black onto your surface. I had added a fairly heavy overlay of tobacco over the toasted oak, and I'm not unhappy with it, but when I tested an area of putting a very thin coat of toasted oak over this finish, I really liked the result a lot better. So that's what I'm going to do with this, is to add, and I'm serious that it's just really a thin coat, just enough to soften this. I'm not trying to cover this like a solid. I just want to fill in a little bit of the contrast. Get this where you can actually see. And you should be able to see that it's still coming through, but it's much softer. Barely dipping in to get just a little bit on here. That's something that could be done with a tabletop, a cabinet door. If you've done a layering finish and it's just a little more stark than what you wanted, adding just a very thin coat. Can pull it all together. Hopefully, with them side by side, you can see what a difference adding that very thin coat of toasted oak over this did. It's not rough looking anymore. Now this is the finished look I wanted, that will fool a lot of people's eye for whether or not that's wood or metal. Off camera, I did the finish that I'm going to do for the other 4 lanterns. And this is, it starts as a base coat of gray mist, dry brushed over this, and then I dry brushed a coat of the antique white in gel stain. Yes, I know my spoon's upside down because I used the handle, and it's less to clean off and lose when I pull it out. So that's what this lantern is going to become now. But these need to be set off because I don't want to bump into them because they're still drying. So Jim, if you could grab those, that would be amazing. I've already done the inside just like I did on the other one, and again, because it's just hard to see. I have gray mist on this brush because I'd already been working again with it. On none of these coats, even the first coat of Tapestry, I've got a really good coat of Tapestry on, but it is not full coverage. If it were something I were going to be using in another way, I would want to put another coat on. But the fact that there's not a full coat on it helps give the highs and lows to all these finishes of giving you multiple tonalities, which is what helps to create a more realistic looking faux finish. I honestly think on all of these I have used less than 1/8 of a teaspoon of any of the stains, to kind of give you an idea that it is definitely not going on heavy. Barely tipping in. There's a lot of mark on that plate where that I have just used different areas with all the stains to pounce them off. And again, I'm keeping going the direction that I envisioned pieces of wood would be to help this look more natural. Sometimes in trying to get very little, you realize you didn't get any. That's when you have to go back and dip again. Check that you have gotten all of the sides, because it's really frustrating when you start to add the next effect and you realize, oh, I missed something. And the second thing that's going to go on this is some of the antique white gel stain. It's white, but it's a soft, creamy white. It's really pretty. And it blends really nicely to add effects because it's not a stark white with it. So that your blending's all the same, go back to the beginning of where you started. And since this is much brighter than the gray mist, you definitely want your brush to touch it more lightly. Because you don't want to coat it, you just want to add some highlights with it. It's a minimal amount of blending with this layer so that you create highlights and not full coverage. Dry brushing like this takes practice, but then it just gives you, once you learn how to deal with it and control it, it gives you so many options for creative finishes, changing things to make them the way you want them to be, to fit where you're going to use them, or to match up for something for a gift for someone else. Okay. This layer is ready to dry, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing to the remaining lantern that is left that will match this one, so that I have pairs of these. I'm putting the second coat on the top of this finish that is the gray mist with the white antique white gel stain. One of the things, a brush like this is like perfect for getting into here to get spaces like that. You just want to be careful that you're not getting down onto your faux finish. And if you can see the angle, it's the point that you want to use, because that makes the brush more like a pencil as far as giving you control against a really close edge. And what I'm putting on here is Almond. I've already painted the inside bottom with Almond because the angles are just impossible to get with a camera for you to see, and it's just basically paint it. Just keep your edges clean, which is the biggest reason I wanted to do that, so that any of the stain that had gotten down toward the base would not look unkept. It would look very finished. On something this small, and the fact that I'm going to do a little bit of mild distress on it, I'm not going to stipple it. I'm going to let those brush strokes, any that happen to remain, though there shouldn't be too many with how well I'm smoothing it with this small brush, and I'm not putting on a super heavy coat. And I figured out, because these don't come out, my solution for painting these is to put them on their side. Paint it. Flip it over. And then where my finger was underneath, just pull the chain, and then I'm going to leave it just hanging off the end so it doesn't stick to it. And that's what I did to the one that matches this. I love how the finish of the gray mist with the antique white, the gel stains blended came out on this. But from a distance, if this is a piece that's sitting as a decor piece, you can't see the detailing on this. If it were a tabletop, if it were a piece of furniture, this would pop at you for the lines of this. But that's not the case with these narrow pieces, even though it's really evident here in person. It's probably very hard for you to see. Also wanted to show you, I cover my cans with saran wrap, a double layer of it, when I'm not using them, after they've been opened, to help create a seal in them. Black would be way too dark on this, I don't want to take away from what I was trying to create with the driftwood look with this by adding brown to it, because that would be too much with it. But since Gray Mist has gray in it, the weathered wood is perfect, and I'm just going to use some out of the lid from where I shook the daylights out of this. The small cans you can shake pretty much, except the metallics need a stir. But I want to get most of this off because I very, very much do not want to overwhelm this with antiquing or giving it some distressed look with this antiquing. You can go too much, too fast, and then the piece looks dirty. It looks overdone, or it looks like the pieces that come from China that have just had a brush stroke slapped down the front of it as the antiquing on it. You want to have a subtle professional look on it. I'm not going to, I don't think, I may change my mind in the process of doing this. I don't think I'm going to do anything to these pieces because I like that they are subtle and soft in this. But what I do want to do is lightly give some accent to this. On the close-ups, you should be able to see that there is just very little going on here. And where I'm pouncing is where I pounced most off. Got that on the white, so I'm getting it back off. These brushes and the tips of them are very, very helpful for this. Put a little bit down here. I'm going to go all the way around doing that. I'm pushing right there because a little bit of the gel got around on that side. If you notice, I still haven't gone back to get any more gel. I want this really dry on my brush. I want hardly anything there. And if you notice, I'm blending. I'm not leaving sharp areas of this. Now I want to work on the top. I definitely want this edge to get some accent. And I finally need to get just the tiniest amount of this back on the plate because I'm not, there we go. Hopefully you can see what happened there. and I'm using the side of my brush because I can control on that edge how much gets on there. Once you get used to doing this, and doing it softly, it really does not take much time at all to add this additional bit. Need a little bit more gel, but literally there's just dots of it on my brush. Turn it, look at it, and now up here is where you can really overdo it fast. Got a mini split that just kicked on in here, which is helping to cause me to have to dip back a little more often because it's trying to dry on my brush. But if you notice, it was just the edges. It was not big heavy marks all over it. And if you notice also, I'm going from the edge and pulling to the center. You want your brush to start at the heaviest, and you want it to end where that has feathered out. That's what gives you a professional looking antiquing. And I also went with the grain that I have created on all of this. But now, hopefully when we come in with some close-ups, you can see the difference in the definition on these. And then I'm going to do just a little bit on the ring and the top up here, because those are things that get a little bit of wear. And man, a little bit goes a long way. That's all I'm going to do, just that little bit of mark. Don't do anything else to it. And I'll also put just a tiny mark here on this for the same reason, because that's where wear happens. I also use brushes that I have used a lot, and actually this is getting even better for doing the antiquing on this right now, the distressing, because the little bit of the paint has dried into the bristles is starting to. So that's going to give me more fine lines, which I really like. But I don't use a brand new perfect art brush, because that's harder to master the technique of dry brushing with. A chip brush is your best way to learn how to do dry brush, and then move from there to figuring out doing it with brushes like this, or even good brushes, because you can do it. But again, on this, just like the other piece, I'm not going to add tons on here. Oh, you can't see up there. Sorry. This is very hard to get you a good close-up and me to see what I'm doing. And to try to get that light to cooperate. Maybe this will work better for you. And if you notice, I've got a good run of gray right there, but my brush, I used it to blend out. Do the top last. I'm just going to rotate through these sides. See if I can get this there for you. If I had done this in black, it would be very, very harsh on here. Weathered wood is a really good one to learn to do the additional highlights with, because it's so easy to overdo antiquing of any kind, and then it's no longer pretty. Then it just looks like it wasn't properly done. That edge just gave me exactly what I wanted. By using the side of the brush in those places, that allows me to create highlight that I can still blend because of the fact that I'm using an antiquing gel. And if you need a different color antiquing gel, you can mix the antiquing gels to create color, but you can also use the tintable gel by HTP to mix any of the water-based paint colors into the color that you need. If you're doing multiple pieces like this, be sure to refer back to, especially as you're learning how to do this, refer back to your original piece that you completed, because if you don't, you will find yourself having created two entirely different looks on the piece, and you really do not want that. You can always add more, but kind of keep the mantra in your head that less is more. And on this, I'm going to give it just a little touch because that's where it would get wear. And I blended that back out because I did not want all of that. And then on the top, just like the other one, very, 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 very lightly do anything to that. And I'm trying to hold the metal instead of anything else. You can blend with your fingers. Soften, soften, soften. Do not leave those harsh. This is getting a little bit more because white always sitting over time gets, especially if a brush swipe goes in a different direction than what you want. And then you notice I have not gone back for any antiquing gel on this. The dryness of my brush is very, very helpful, so that there is not tons of this on there. And now I need to get this upper part. And if you notice, my fingers are underneath, not grabbing the top of this. The last piece I'm going to do, which you're not going to be able to see because it's going to be too hard for me to do, is this very top, and I will follow the grain line with that to add just a little bit up here in the top. I will show you in just a second. There, I may be able to get some of it down in there, but can show you. I'm going to accent that frame edge because it doesn't show as well in the design as I would like it to. and I really think I'm going to leave all of these white wires just exactly the way they are because I like how this looks here in person. And hopefully with some close-ups here, you'll be able to see that this has brought this out more. And there's not a lot that's been added to it, but here in person, it really brought out the finish and made it much more realistic looking, as though it's old driftwood. And I'm going to finish doing that to this one and the other small one off camera. These were the gray mist with the antique white gel stain brushed over it, and then after that completely dried, I added the weathered wood over it to make it fully into the driftwood look. And you should be able to see the grain markings and the very, very light amount of antiquing on the top of this. Less is more is always the best mantra. These have the glass put back into them because, as you'll see in other images, the light from a candle looks much prettier inside glass than without the glass, but they certainly could be used either way. And this is the same finish, but you can see the coloration's a little bit better on the top of this because there's more area to be able to see. And you can see the line markings on this too. These two are where I switched up what I was doing because I wasn't thinking at the time. And this became tobacco over the tapestry and then some toasted oak over that to create this look. And this pair is the toasted oak with then tobacco heavily applied, but it had more striations in it than I wanted. So then over the top of that was a very thin light coat of toasted oak that mellowed all of this out to give you a really nice looking finish on it that makes it more able to fool the eye as to what it is, that until you touch it and feel it, it doesn't look like it's metal pieces. All of them started with tapestry as the base color on them. These have gone now from being very sparkly, blingy for wedding decor and for table centerpieces. Now they are very versatile to go with a wide range of styles in home decor. And all it took was some out-of-the-box thinking, some creativity, and some elbow grease, and some simple steps to create these finishes. So I hope you try it yourself, and you look at things and go, hey, I could probably change that. If this inspires you, if you've liked what you've seen, please take a moment to subscribe. It won't cost you a thing, and it certainly helps us out. Thank you.